Welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio, your show for all things positive, with your host, Kirk Spencer. Hello and welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio. Today I have a very special guest from Israel. But before I introduce her, I just wanted to tell you some things that you need to know. This is the last podcast interview show that we're doing here on podcasting. We're moving the interviews to Freedom Talk Radio through the Blog Talk Radio format. So the suggestion I have is to watch the blog, which will come out within tomorrow or Thursday, letting you know, as well as a press release letting you know about our changes. We're still going to be doing the Thoughts for Growth segments here Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Wednesdays will be our new day for interviews. They will either be live shows or pre-recorded, depending on what the needs are of my guest. So, with that, just make sure you watch the blog, which is at www.kwave6radio.tk, or if you have problems with that, the long version of our website or URL is kwave6radio.wordpress.com. So, now with that being said, welcome to the show, Zion Suskind-Sacks. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here.
Hi, nice to be with you.
Yeah, a little bit about Zion here is that she is an author of a book, which she'll tell us a little bit about later. And she's also a blogger. She is a personal trainer, and she's an English as a second language teacher in Israel. So with that being said, you have an article that came out not too long ago. And if I remember this correctly, I think the title was No Need for a Narrative. And I believe you're basing this off of, revisionist history, people that are trying to rewrite history, or they're telling a narrative of something that's basically fiction, but could be eventually, in the future, as many things of our history that a lot of people don't know about, accepted as the truth when it's just like some of these newspapers that get on the internet and people believe it, and if you go in and look at these websites and look in their about section, they'll tell you it's a satire.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Tell us how basically that and what you've written ties in together.
Okay, actually I've written 2 articles on the subject of narrative. The first one was called "There is no in the Middle East conflict. There are no narratives. There are only facts."
Yeah.
And when I realized that, it had quite an impact. It was shared quite a few times and created some waves. But when I realized that it was strong enough, I joined hands with a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. He is the foremost expert on the Arab world here in Israel. He's a professor at Bar-Ilan University, a lecturer at Bar-Ilan University, and he speaks, reads, and writes Arabic, very well familiar with the Arabic world. And he said to me, why don't you write an article and call it "The Hell with the Narrative"? Mm-hmm. And I decided to do it, and that one got quite a bit of attention. Of course, the name is not your common name for an article, but we wanted to create an impact because about 40 years ago, some story, I call it narrative, started spreading around, and it's being repeated and it's being developed, and people are beginning to accept it as true, and that narrative is nothing but a fabricated lie. And I'll tell you in a moment why. And, it was Goebbels, I'm sorry to have to quote him, but I believe it was him who said, a lie repeated 1,000,000 times becomes truth.
Yes.
I want to stop it from becoming a truth a second before it does, hopefully before. But I think it has really developed such a momentum that, like a snowball, it's gonna be difficult to stop it. That's why we need to use harsh words like the hell with the narrative. The narrative, the definition of the term narrative could be a few things. It could be a tale. The definition, the dictionary is a tale. However, a narrative could be factual, I'm not denying that. It could be an embellished story or even an embellishment of some facts, or it could be a product of someone's imagination. My problem with such an ambiguous, triple ambiguous term is that where do we draw the line between fact, between embellishment and imagination? And I have a problem with such ambiguous terms when so many people's lives are at stake. You cannot base a conflict on a narrative. You have to base it on facts. Then you can debate them, argue about them, agree or disagree. But when you have a narrative that is a fabricated lie, and I'll tell you again in a moment, as I said, why I think it's a lie, you really have to make sure that those terminologies are erased altogether, and you have to use the factual, true terms. Now, a new nation was born, the Palestinian nation. After the Six-Day War, before the Six-Day War, there was no Palestinian nation. There was an area called Palestine until 1948, an area that was also called Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. It's a stated, well-documented fact. The place where I live now is part of an area that carried two names, an original name, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, and an arbitrary name that was given to it later in the year 135 CE by Emperor Adrian, the name Palestine. Mm-hmm. Why was the second name given? The Romans controlled, the Roman Empire was in this area. The Jews were a big thorn in their skin. They didn't want us here, so obviously, remember, they destroyed the Second Temple in Jerusalem in the year 70, exiled the Jews with all the spoils of the temple. You can see it on Titus' Ark in Rome. He engraved all of his victories around the Roman Empire, including the picture of the slaves carrying the spoils of the temple to Rome. Now, that was enough. They hated the Jews so much. They wanted to disassociate the Jews from this land altogether. So they gave it the name, they named it to add an insult to injury. They named it after the worst enemy that the Jews have ever had, the Philistines. Yep. The Philistines were a nation of invaders who came from the Mediterranean Sea and settled along the coast, the southwestern coast of the land of Israel. They were invaders. I have a problem with that name. If anyone wants to obtain legitimacy, anybody wants to claim a state of their own, why in the world would they insist on being called after invaders? It is the biggest hypocrisy in the world. These people adopted the name of invaders. They adopted a name of an area, just an area. There was never a country named Palestine. There was never a nation called Palestine. And there was never a culture called Palestinian culture as far as borders and a country and a sovereign nation. Never. These people first came as a Palestinian nation in 1967. Prior to that, we never heard of them. So that's the first lie. Second lie, that they gave a name to an area that was known in biblical time as Judea and Samaria. And I'm not saying biblical because there are archaeological finds to back those claims. So if anybody is here going to accuse me of saying, oh, you're one of those who believe that God gave it to the Jews, I never use that argument in a political debate because I don't think religion should be mixed with politics. That's what we have nowadays. We have a religion that has become an ideology, and that's the most lethal cocktail the world can face. And I'm not even naming anyone, okay? My issue is... I
agree with you.
I beg your pardon?
I just say I agree with you. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. In any case, they took a name of an area that was called Judea and Samaria, and they gave it the West Bank. When people talk to me about the West Bank, I ask them, excuse me, which West Bank are you talking about? The West Bank of the Seine River in Paris, or the West Bank of the Nile River in Egypt, or the West Bank of the Amazon River in Central South America? When we talk of the West Bank, it's such a vague term. Why use those terms when we have real names, Judea and Samaria? Now, the term settler, excuse me, settlers were the people who came to the west of the United States, the cowboys, those that moved to Australia. In Hebrew, the word for what was called, I wish you could see me, I'm using quotation mark sign, okay?
Okay.
When it became the word settler, actually in Hebrew is called mitnachel. Mitnachel has become a settler. That's a total bastardization of the word mitnachel. Mitnachel literally means an inheritor of a piece of land. An inheritor of a piece of land. How did that become from an inheritor of a piece of land into a settler is beyond me. And then we have settlers, and of course we have settlements. Excuse me, these are towns, people live there, people bought the land, people paid for the land. I'm not going to deny that in the war of 1948, there were some injustices done to all sides of the conflict. To the Arabs who lived here, and to the Jews who lived here, to the Arabs who lived in other places, and to the Jews who lived in Arab countries. I'm going to be the last person to deny it. But the question is, how do we blow that story up to proportions that would give the world an impression that more Arabs here suffered than Jews in Arab countries suffered? That I don't know. There were I don't remember the exact numbers, but there were about 700,000, 800,000 and 850,000 Jews that were forced out of Arab countries. They were also refugees. But they don't suffer from the eternal status of refugees. Any nation in the world, do you know how many sets of refugees the world has seen? In Uganda, in Zimbabwe, in America, in other parts of the world. Refugees have always been the product of any war. Where are those historical refugees? They came, they lived, and we forgot about them. The only group of people that are still acknowledged, recognized, and enjoy enjoys the status of refugees are the so-called Palestinians. I don't care what they call themselves. You have to understand. I don't mind if they call themselves the kingdom of King Kong. I don't care. They can call themselves Palestinians. They can call themselves Arabs. They can call themselves, but they're not going to convince me that they are the indigenous people of this place. They're named after invaders, they are invaders, and they forever will be. They want to call themselves Palestinians, that's fine. Every time I address them, I say, those that call themselves Palestinians, out of respect for a person's choice, you want to be respected, I have no problem. But don't try to convince me that that name gives you some legitimacy, because it doesn't. It is a lie.
Well, one of the leaders back, I think it was in the 80s, was actually quoted as saying that there is no such thing as a Palestinian people. But even go further, there has been a question that came up, and I'm not sure if it was from China or Japan, but if they were asking if you are the inheritors to land, then where was your constitution? Where is the money, the currency that you used when your civilization was there? And they just produced a whole list of items just to say, if you are, where is the proof? And they've never answered the question, as far as I know.
I agree, and that's the issue we're having. But somehow the world has been brainwashed into believing that. I'll tell you that one luck that those that call themselves Palestinians, or those that belong to a religion called Islam, have, is that they came out with the claims in the post-colonial period. the world still feels guilty for what it did during the colonial period, whether it's the British colonial period, the Portuguese, the Dutch, you name it, the Belgian, the French. It is guilt, the guilt of nations. And the guilt you can really play it. If you play it well, you can achieve tons of achievements through that, okay? Because the world says, oh, we've been so bad to these and these and these. How are we going to rectify it? Let's be politically correct. We invent a new term called politically correct. So if you belong to a darker skin, or if you belong to a certain religion that has been persecuted or has been downtrodden throughout history, we make it up to you because we have wronged you in one way or another. And that is the problem. The world lets them get away with murder because they expect more out of Israel, they expect more out of the Jews, and they expect less out of them. Imagine in a family there are two children. One is an achiever, one is a winner, one is has a great future ahead of him. The other one is not, is underdeveloped, not necessarily intellectually, okay? Underdeveloped, far behind the other kid. And the parents always say to the good kid, you be good. If they have a fight, you be good. You should let your brother get away with it because you're above him. We expect more out of you. This is exactly what the world is doing right now in the Middle Eastern conflict.
Indeed.
The world knows deep inside that Israel is right. And every day where another bomb explodes somewhere in the world, every day where another Western is being beheaded somewhere in the Middle East and not by Israel, the world realizes that what Israel is up against. I remember standing in the UK once when there was a demonstration of Arabs, Palestinians, those that call themselves Palestinians and Arabs, in front of the Israeli embassy in London. And they started breaking windows and really going out of order. A policeman who knew I was Israeli turned to me and said, I can only imagine what you people in Israel have to put up with. Mm-hmm. One person said it. I can only imagine how many people think it but do not dare say it.
Indeed. With that, we're going to take our first break, so please stay tuned. We'll be right back with my guest today, who is Zion Suskind-Sacks. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Candy Leonard, author of Beatleness, How the Beatles and Their Fans Remade the World. And you're listening to K-Wave 6 Radio with Kirk Spencer.
Do you need a website or a webmaster for your business or hobby? A wordsmith for a research paper or for a script, an article, or for a language translator? Do you need an audio or visual project created or edited? Contact K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk for all your website, writing, audio, and visual needs. Our rates are competitive and our services are excellent. That's K-Wave 6 Productions at www.kwave6productions.tk or email us at info@kwave6productions.tk.
Hi, this is Duke Mayo Rockefeller. Please check out my humanitarian organization, www.livechildlive.org. You are listening to K-Wave 6 Radio with our esteemed radio host, Kirk Spencer.
Hello and welcome back to K-Wave 6 Radio. Again, today my guest is, I want to call her lady, because she very much is a lady. Lady Zion Suskind-Sacks from Israel. We've been talking about some of the things that she's been writing recently, and we're talking about changing the narratives, and she did give a quotation. If you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. People believe it anyway. It's not that it becomes the truth. People accept it as true. That's the real danger that Zion is talking about here today. So to start off this segment, I want to ask two questions very quickly.
Sure.
The United Nations has been quoted as saying, yes, we have a double standard for Israel that we don't hold for any other country. And the second question is kind of a question statement, but I would like for you to elaborate on this when you're comfortable to do so. Is I had read something a long time ago, and it was actually put into, as I call it, YouTube University, a YouTube video, talking about how is around, I'm not sure, but it was in the first half of the 20th century, somewhere between 1920 something and 1948, where a caliph asked for people from other Arab nations, such as Algeria and other places, and Constantinople, whatever, to move to the land of Israel because they wanted to basically move Jews out. So that's where part of that came from, calling them the Palestinians. Do you know anything about that, or am I getting it wrong, or am I getting it right, or somewhere in between?
Well, I want to go back to one comment that you made before you asked those questions. You said, Batzion wants to change the narrative. No, I want to get rid of the narrative. I want the word narrative out of the lexicon, primarily for the reasons that I mentioned in the first segment of our interview. The term is so ambiguous. It is so unclear. And when the lives of people here in the Middle East conflict are so much at stake, you cannot have them determined by ambiguity. Mm-hmm. We need to be precise, succinct, and truthful. So I want to do away with the word narrative altogether. We need facts, not narrative. Indeed. Because about a fact, there is no question. About a narrative, there is. Now, to go back to the United Nations, it's interesting that you talked about the standards. Bibi Netanyahu, our prime minister, said the world has three yardsticks. One in which they measure democracies, another one where they measure dictatorships, and a third one where they measure Israel. So Israel doesn't fall into any of these. And yes, the world expects out of the Jews a lot more. I don't know whether it should be a compliment or not. I know I said to you, I'll not mention God, but in Fiddler on the Roof, the milkman, Tevye, says to God at one point and said, God, we are the chosen people, but could you not choose somebody else for a change? So, I guess that's part of being who we are in our role in history. The world looks up at us or to us and hoping that we've given the world so much because that's our role in history, to lead, to guide, to share, and to improve. And I guess that's why we're held at a different standard. The world expects more out of us than they would out of anyone else.
With that thought in mind, there might be a few
reasons.
Excuse me. With that thought in mind, you just made me think of something. There's the expression oftentimes that if someone's trying to tear you down, don't pay them any attention because they're trying to bring you down to their level.
Exactly. And I think you were, in the little while that we've been talking, you got the impression that I'm not that easy to go down to their level. I mentioned to you that at this stage in my life, I have one goal and I'm very happy where I am. And that's why I'm not afraid to speak what I think is the truth. And I'm documenting. I bring substantiation for everything that I say to back what I claim to be the truth. I've mentioned it in the first segment, and there are other examples that we are going to bring up to show you historical truth. And when I mean historical truth, I'm talking about facts. Historical facts, archaeological facts, and legal facts. And they're all on the side of Israel. So to go back to the second issue, I don't know which caliph, I've heard it, but I cannot really express an opinion on that. I can tell you, though, that most of the Arabs that came to this part of the world are indeed newcomers. They are nomadic people who ended up here. Very few can trace themselves back to the times of the Philistines, if they call themselves Palestinians. So yes, there was a trend to bring people here.
And I'm sorry. Tell us, well, I know you were born in Israel and you grew up there. What do you know of that? I know you're not old enough to have witnessed all of that, at least not. Well, anyway, what do you know about the caliph that brought in these people from other lands to occupy? They were basically occupying a land that was never theirs. Speaking of which, the right of return and how does Israel, because I've never heard this in any media sources or anything, so I want to get it straight from you who lives there. How does Israel explain that to the world, basically? In other words, the right of return.
They want to come back here. We've developed this country. This country was nothing. And yes, I'm old enough to remember this country as not having infrastructure. I remember dirt roads. I remember sand dunes. Where I live now, there used to be dunes. It would have been a dream. I would have never believed that I would end up living in places where I played on dunes, okay? Mm-hmm. So this country was nothing. And now when you come to Israel, you're not just in any country. You're in a country that is in the 20th century. We have beautiful building, nice infrastructure, and it's not because we have natural resources. All we have are human resources. And we were able to utilize them to the best, not only of Israel, but to the rest of the world. Inventions, Israeli inventions. Every day Israel invents something. So naturally, people will be attracted to a place like this. People will want to live in the place that I live. They carry keys of whatever place that their ancestor, they claim, lived here. I could carry keys from Spain, where my mother's family was expelled in 1942. I can carry keys recently from Europe, where my parents were expelled. I don't. People move on in life. They perpetuate their status. They want to become here to the very same places, live in places where, I'm not saying they didn't have home here. Don't misunderstand me, okay? But they cannot have other people live in it right now. Well, I'm not going to stand up and leave. Do you know that they educate their children? They give them maps, which of course they call quote unquote Palestine, and they bring them over here to show the Jaffa and Haifa, and they say, you see, this is where your parents used to, or grandparents used to live. One day you're going to either have to kick this person who lives here out or kill them if you want to move into this home. Now imagine if in America the American Indians did the same thing. If the Hispanics from Mexico did it in Texas or in California, which used to be part of Mexico. Mm-hmm. Imagine them doing that. People just move on, but they want to perpetuate the problem. They keep so many refugees and they want them all, bring them all here. It is not going to happen. It will never happen because this state is Jewish. We have to maintain a Jewish majority. It was set not by Jews as a Jewish state. It was established as a Jewish homeland by Balfour and Lord Balfour, a non-Jew, in 1970. It was established as a Jewish homeland in the San Remo Accord in 1922, or 1920, by the Supreme Court of the Five, England, France, Italy, America, and Japan. Non-Jewish countries. They decided, they set as an international court, after the Turks evacuated this place, they lost World War I, this place was in a vacuum. There was a land. It was no man's land. No one knew who it belonged to. So just like if a bank finds a certain treasure in one of its safes and they don't know who the owner is, they say whoever believes they have a claim to that treasure should bring forth their arguments. The same happened with this land, Eretz Israel, or as some call it, Palestine. Eretz Israel was a no man's land. It was empty. Who does it belong to? So the Zionist Federation, the Zionist organizations brought forth their arguments. The Arabs under King Faisal brought forth their arguments. And the court set and determined that based on the arguments, this land, Eretz Israel, belongs to the Jews. It's documented. The League Nations accepted it and the United Nations, which replaced the League of Nations, inherited all these legal decisions, this accord. The world should recognize it. No, but the world conveniently forgot about that. There's a book by Professor Dr. Jacques Gauthier, a Canadian man who did his PhD dissertation on the book on the subject, Who Owns Jerusalem? It's a 1,000-page book. A non-Jew. His conclusion, Jerusalem belongs to the Jews. This land belongs to the Jews. So we have historical evidence. He documented everything. He brought forth evidence. We're going to base the reality in the Middle East on fact, not on lies, not on fabrications. They want to come here as refugees. There is no way in the world that they're going to come as refugees. I'm a daughter of 2 refugees. Does that make me a refugee? My parents survived the Holocaust. They were refugees. Does this automatically give me the status of being a refugee? Yes, I'd like to enjoy the money that UNRWA gives. I'd like to enjoy the education that UNRWA gives, that the EU gives, that America gives, that the rest of the world gives. But it doesn't work this way. People had choice. They could have had the exact same thing without the bloodshed, without the pain, without the suffering. They could have had it 66 years ago when the United Nations voted on the partition plan. They could have had an Arab and they could have had our Jewish state. They didn't want it. We wanted it. We would have settled for the smallest piece of land, just give us a homeland. They didn't want it. Now they want to replay history. Someone should tell them that history is not a dress rehearsal. You cannot replay it.
Yeah, that goes with something I've always said. Life is not a dress rehearsal. You just live it day by day.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this. Well, I don't know if it's a question or not, or it may be a statement. You were talking about a Jewish state. But let's address something that you and I both know, but other people still accuse Israel of being an apartheid state. But I've shared this on many occasions on different platforms, and I actually went to the Knesset, the website, and I've put the membership of the Knesset. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Which one of the Knesset? I apologize, I didn't understand.
I'm sorry. There's a website for the Israeli Knesset Parliament.
Yes.
And it lists members of the Knesset. In other words, what I'm basically asking you is, what is the percentage of actually Arab members of the Knesset?
Okay. I'm glad you brought up the issue of apartheid. I was going to deal with it also as part of the answer to the return, the right of return. They blame us for being an apartheid state. Apartheid is awful, terrible thing. The definition of apartheid is really racism that is embedded in the law, okay? Where people of a certain color go one way, people of a different color go another way. People don't mingle, people don't join hands or occupy positions in each other's community. If it is an apartheid society, country, if it's so bad, why are they so eager to come here?
Yeah.
Why do they want to come here? Would you want to go, would you want to go to an apartheid country if you are a black person or if you are a colored person, as they called people? Of course you wouldn't.
No.
But they're so eager to come here. It's part of their agenda. They want to come here, they want to settle here, they want to multiply here, they want to become a majority and kick us out. And that, mark my lips, read my lips, mark my words, that ain't going to happen.
You're not going to be a repeat of Europe. Okay,
let me go back to the Knesset and to, it's
Okay.
not only the Knesset, I don't have statistics of numbers, but I can tell you, they are heads of departments in hospitals, they are judges, the judge who put Israel's previous, before the last one, in jail, is an Arab, an Israeli Arab. They are lecturers at university, they attend universities, they work in my pharmacy, they work in, hey listen, if I really, people don't understand it. You see what some of them do, not all of them, some of them do, they're ready to walk into a synagogue and smashed people with hammers. How would I know? We have a lot of trust to Israeli Arabs. If he's the head of a department, I trust him that he's not going to poison me.
Yeah.
People don't understand that. You go to the beaches, you see Arabs there. Next to me, every summer I go to the beach. Next to me, I see Arab women. I go to the mall, I see Arabs in their traditional garb. I go to anywhere I go, I see Arabs. My doctor, Arabs. Bus, Arabs. Train, Arabs.
Yep.
Is this an apartheid state? Let me explain one thing. People need to distinguish between two terms. Apartheid or racism, which are, as I said, embedded in the law.
Mm-hmm.
The law says blacks are not allowed to go in here, Arabs are not allowed to go in here. There is no such law in Israel. I challenge all your listeners to go find a law like this, okay? But there is one other thing which is embedded in human nature. Human beings all over the world, regardless of where they live, suffer from the same ailment.
Oh, yeah.
Which one? Discrimination.
Yeah.
We discriminate in every aspect of our lives, everywhere. As a teacher, I may discriminate against students. As an apartment building janitor, I may discriminate against one of the tenants. As in every place in the world where you are, there is and can be discrimination to some extent, because this is part of human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that Israel is also guilty of. But we're human beings, just like everybody else. I know they regard us as monsters or as geniuses. I've had both extremes described as. But believe me, we're human beings just like everybody else.
Indeed. With that, we're going to take our second break, so stay tuned. We'll be right back with Zion Suskind-Sacks.
Hi, this is Lisa Avebury, and I am with Sacred Introvert Retreat Tours. We're heading off to Glastonbury this May, and we hope you'll join us. So check it out, sacredintrovert.com. And I'm at K-Wave 6 Radio, and I'm feeling super honored and blessed to be here. Have a beautiful day.
Hi, this is Pat Kammer, author of Love's Voice Changes You, Book 1. And I now have Book 2, which is called Hello Awesome, Message from Spirit in Pat's Patters. Buy your book from Amazon.com.
Are you ready to put an end to thinking about how you wish it were and take action? Take this step to find out more by going to coachingbyria.com. And you can receive your free consultation session with Coach Ria. Coach Ria is a certified professional life coach with a passion to help make the difference in the world.
Hi, this is Al Sussman, the author of Changing Times, 101 Days That Shaped a Generation, published by Parading Press. And you're listening to the always interesting Kirk Spencer on K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hello and welcome back. Again, today my guest is Zion Suskind-Sacks in Israel. We've been talking about, if you've just tuned in, we've been talking about, Israel and getting rid of a narrative that could be, if not stopped in its infancy, if you will, could be ended up accepted as the truth in the future. So Ms. Sacks here is just saying, no more. So before we continue, I have actually two questions. I'm going to start with the one we were just talking about. We're talking about Knesset members. There are Arab members, or Arabs that are members of the Knesset, which is the Jewish parliament, or Israeli parliament, I should actually say. And also the fact that probably many people in especially like United States, Canada, and other parts of the world usually think that all Jews are basically come with European looks and etc. But there are Falashic Jews, there are Jews that are coming from China, they're coming from all over the world. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I went to Sweden and I saw Swedish Jews, they looked exactly like Swedish people. People look at me and they don't look Jewish. You saw me, I'm light complected, really nice, light complected hair. My parents didn't look Jewish. So the question is today, actually, being an indigenous nation has got nothing to do. It's not my decision. It's not my definition. It's actually the UN form of indigenous nations has decided that it has nothing to do with the blood quantum, which of course determined our features, DNA, but it has more to do with the connection to the land. And if there is one nation that's connected to the land more than any other nation, it's the Jewish nation. It's in our history, it's in our archaeology. I'm not even saying it's in our religion, because I promise you I don't use that argument. Mm-hmm. It's in our poetry, in our culture, in our literature, in our paintings, art, other forms of art. So the connection to the land is just so strong. And that's why doesn't matter what color you are, which nationality you come from. If you're Jewish, you're connected to this land. And of course, being Jewish, as you know, is not necessarily being born into a Jewish mother. It's also someone who goes through halachic conversion that is accepted by the court of Jewish law.
Yes. I'm listening to you, and I'm having such a good time listening to you. Almost forgot the question here.
I'm sure you will remember. I trust you.
Yeah, I'll get around to it a little bit. But until I actually do, the other question I want to ask you is, because in the last segment you touched on it, but you didn't really elaborate. We're talking about Israelis, and as you said, we mostly focus on... never mind. The other thoughts started coming back into mind. But we focus on the human ability to create, to make life better. Give us some examples, because I know there's a lot of some examples of some Israeli inventions that people probably don't even pay any attention to.
Yeah, creating water, desalination. It's an Israeli invention. Why? In Israel, necessity is the mother of invention. We don't have water. Fortunately, it's raining today, so hopefully it will continue. But rain is a very rare commodity here in Israel. There's hardly any water. We save on water. I don't take long showers. Ever since I was a child, I was raised to save water because every drop is precious. So we developed desalination technologies. We grow tomatoes and vegetables in greenhouses. We invented the disc on key. There's a certain disc on key. The disc that you carry around and you can stick in a computer. The computer stick. What do you call it?
Memory sticks, flash
memory
cards,
stick. It's
and
an
all
Israeli
that. Yeah.
invention. We call it disc on key because you can put it on a keychain. Disc on key. Mm-hmm. And the MRI. And recently the Ebola. Israel is probably developed a vaccination against, or a cure for Ebola rather. Mm-hmm. Other inventions, other medical inventions to help blind people, to help paralyzed people. Again, plastic surgery, reconstructive surgery. I think Israel is probably number one in the world. Necessity. Mm-hmm. We have terror attacks, we have terror victims. We have to perfect that technique. Mm-hmm. So yes, we are a major leader in many fields around the world. Nobel Prize winners among Israelis, Jews. I don't distinguish between Israeli Jews and other Jews. Of course, in Israel we also have Arabs. We have Christian Arabs, we have Muslim Arabs, we have Druze, we have many other ethnic groups in Israel, but the majority is Jewish. Israel is a Jewish country, and our symbol, of course, is the star. The flag is the Star of David, and the emblem is the candelabra, the menorah we call it, the seven-stemmed candelabra that burned in the temple in Jerusalem. And we have a Jewish tradition we try to keep. Hopefully there is a law that is going to pass in the Knesset defining even more, focusing even more on defining Israel as a Jewish state, because somehow we tend to forget it. So to go back to what you said earlier about Israeli inventions, yes, there are quite a few, and there is actually a website called 21st Century, Israel 21st Century. If you go on there, every day you will see at least one invention that comes out of Israel. Every single day.
Even the cell phones were invented in Israel?
No, a certain component of the cell phone was invented in Israel. The cell phone was invented in Sweden, I believe, but there's a certain component in the cell phone that is Israeli, and you cannot work the cell phone, I understand, without that component. Intel is in Israel, okay? Microsoft has a very big section here in Israel. The richest man in the world, Warren Buffett, he's not a big man. He didn't become rich by being stupid. He bought a big share of a certain company. I don't remember. It has something to do with Isra. No, I don't remember. But anyway, he bought a big chunk of it, and he's proud of it. He invested in the future. That's how he calls it, because Israel is the future. And now we are talking about ending this. Are we about to end this show? I'm sorry.
No, not yet.
Okay, because you remember we had an agreement how we're going to end this show.
Yeah. No,
okay,
we have about roughly 5 minutes before we take our last break, so you have 5 minutes to go for that, and then we'll come back and you can finish up on the last segment.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm ready for your next question.
You assumed that I had another question. You were going so well.
I know, yeah, but when it comes to Israel, people have millions of questions.
Well, I don't have any particular question in mind at this point. I was still trying to remember this one question, and I know it has something to do with something I've written down, but I can't remember exactly what it is. But let's go from that to, let's talk about this. The Iron Dome, which served you very well in the roughly 60 days that you were being bombarded by Gaza. Yes. It hit the news that the United States, who provided the Iron Dome, actually wanted to buy the technology, I guess, that Israel improved. This is an assumption on my part. Israel made some alterations to the Iron Dome system that now the United States is interested in. Is that true?
Well, yes, the Iron Dome is Israeli invention, but we don't have the resources to develop it, to build it. It's a very expensive piece of equipment. And I personally hope that Israel doesn't sell it, because if you sell something, it's very likely that it will end up in the hands of the enemy, and then they will use that technology. And I always want to be one step ahead of my enemy, because if I only have one chance with them. The moment I'm behind, there's no more Israel. You know how Golda Meir said, if Arabs laid down their weapons, there will be peace. If Israel laid down its weapons, there will be no Israel. I want to be here. I love living. I enjoy living.
Yeah.
And I have a right to live, just like anybody else has a right to live, just like the other side has a right to live. I'm telling you, it's just respecting, celebrating life versus celebrating death. And I'm afraid the other side is more engaged in celebrating death while we are engaged in celebrating life.
Indeed. Indeed. With that, I'm going to take our last break, so I ask that you stay with us, and we'll be right back with Zion Suskind-Sacks of Israel. Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, this is Suzanne Perry, founder of LoveShouldn'tHurt.tv. You're listening to K-Wave 6 Radio.
Hi, this is Amy Young of JSJ4. We are providers of Junior, iPhone, iPad, iPod, also Samsung, Sony, Nokia parts and accessories at very good quality and low prices. We sell to individuals and companies, have 3 to 5 days delivery time by DHL or UPS. We do delivery in 24 hours after payment confirmed. For more information, see our website www.jsjphone.com www.jsjphone.com. Contact me Amy Young mailbox emy@jsjphone.com or by phone 0086 134 186969395 by Skype emy.yang2012.
Hi, this is Dr. Nick Leroy, and you're listening to K-Wave 6 Radio with its host, Kirk Spencer. I'm a holistic physician. I specialize in women's health, breast thermography, the alternative treatment of cervical dysplasia, and gastrointestinal disorders. And you can find me at drnick.net.
Hi, and welcome back. We're going to finish up the show with this segment, and as promised, Zion Suskind has something that she wants to actually share with us. So at this point, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you.
Okay, well, Jewish people are very optimistic people. Mm-hmm. We claim that there is a Messiah that's going to come. We've been waiting for him for over 2,000 years, and we still believe that he will come. Our national anthem is called the Hope. So we do share with the world a lot of optimism, a lot of promise to the future. And I want to make sure that the world reads as I face. So I would like to end with the following request or suggestion to the world. If the world wants to remain safe, it needs to make sure Israel is safe and Israel is secure. There was a German pastor by the name Pastor Müller, who in 1946 said, "First they came to the Jews and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came to the Catholics and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Catholic. Then they came to the worker unions and I didn't say anything because I wasn't one of them. Then they came to me and there was no one left to speak." If the world wants someone to be there to speak for them when they come to them, and they will be coming to them. Listen to my words. They are already coming after them. But if they want someone to be there to speak for them when they come for them, let them make sure that there's an Israel strong, thriving, and secure. Because as I see Israel, we are the bulletproof vest of the world. Every calamity, terror calamity, war calamity that ever befell the modern world, Israel was the first one to experience it. Then they came for the rest of them. But because Israel was there, strong, withstanding it, developing means to fight those evil forces and sharing the means with the world will survive, thrive, grow, and continue. So that's why the world has to make sure Israel stays strong and secure.
Indeed. That's all you wanted to say?
That's a lot. That's saying a lot.
Oh, it is saying a lot.
Asking the world, explaining to the world why Israel is important, why they need Israel no less than Israel needs them. I'm not going to sit here and say we don't need anybody. We do need friends. And I would take the time and thank all our friends out there, because we do have some very good friends. And a friend in need is a friend indeed. And we are now seeing who our true friends are. But for the sake of the world, friends and foes alike, Israel needs to stay strong if the world wants to stay there for many, many, many years to come.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, indeed. The something that we said a little bit earlier, and I just thought of a different way of saying it because I said it kind of on the cuff. You said it at the beginning. I am who I am, and I am comfortable with who I am. And I think that is something, as you said, when we become older, we do tend to take life that way. I don't need to bend for you. I don't need to be what you think I should be. I am who I am, and I have a contribution to the world. Mm-hmm. So, with that being said, and it said after that, because that was your statement, if the world, we live by a different, Israel, Jews live by different standards. Everybody has double standard for Israel. And as you said, everybody looks up. Now, a lot of people wouldn't agree with that. But I'm going to ask people to take a look at it from a different angle. If you're talking about a homeless person, what can you do to tear down a homeless person? They're already on the streets. They're already at rock bottom. What can you say or do to them that makes them any worse than what they are? But if you have someone that is equal to you or above you, as far as abilities, those are the people you're trying to tear down.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense, and it's true. That's unfortunate, because people say to me, why does the world hate the Jews? And I didn't want to end this interview in a negative note, so we can turn it into something positive as well. I wanted to end up with something positive. Why does the world hate the Jews? Because I think it's fear. I don't even think it's jealousy. I think it's fear. By all rules of nature, Jews should have been extinct by now.
Yes.
They've tried to kill us. The Babylonians have, the Persians have, before them the Assyrians, then the Greeks, then the Romans, then the Germans, the Poles, then the Ukrainians, then the Russians, and now the Arabs, and we are still not only surviving, we are alive. We're thriving, we're succeeding, we're developing, we're sharing with the world.
Mm-hmm.
The world does not know how to explain the phenomenon called Jews. We are like a walking apparition among them. We should be dead. And who is not afraid of the inexplicable? Everybody is afraid of the unknown, of the inexplicable. But we're here, and we're here to stay. And that's my message to the world, because it's our duty to be leaders in the world. It's our destiny to be forever a small nation, but it is our destiny to be an eternal nation.
Indeed. And as I say with my program all the time, in case people don't get it, the subtitle to my show is Your Show for All Things Positive. So hopefully you understand this is ending in a positive note, but also is looking at life the way it is, but sometimes just changing, if you will, the light on a certain situation or a certain object, and looking at it from a different point of view, which is part of what I do on a daily basis with the Thoughts for Growth. This is the reason why I asked Zion Suskind-Sacks to be part of the show today. And probably after, January 1st, I'll ask her to come back again, and we'll talk about whatever she's written by that time. So,
with great pleasure, Kirk. Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure talking to you and to your listeners, and hopefully we can speak again.
Definitely. With that, I'm going to thank you for being here. Thank you as a listener for being here, and I just ask that you stay here for our final notes. All right, before we go, what is your website address?
It's www.batzion, BAT-ZION.name, N-A-M-E, www.batzion.name.
Beautiful. Okay. Any final words?
It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to speaking again on your show, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. In closing, I need to tell you that we're changing our schedule. First, we're moving from 7 a.m. Eastern to 9 a.m. Eastern, starting on December 1st, 2014. Thoughts for Growth segments will be on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern. Our interviews also will be changing to Wednesdays, and they will be on Blog Talk Radio, either live, if our guests can match our time, or pre-recorded. All interviews will be archived in Blog Talk Radio, and as if what I'm told is true, it will also be on iTunes. I'll do my best to post the interviews on YouTube within 36 hours of the actual interview. You'll still be able to hear the Thoughts for Growth segments on Podomatic.com, Stitcher.com, iTunes, RSS feed, and YouTube. All links can be found on the home page. Keep abreast of what's happening at K-Wave 6 Radio by following our blog at our short URL, which is www.kwave6radio.tk. That's www.kwave6radio.tk, or the long URL, which is www.kwave6radio.wordpress.com. We also ask that you support our advertisers, especially if you didn't get a chance to hear them on the show. Please go to our homepage and click on advertisers and click on their little thumbnails, and it'll take you straight to their website. Also, if you have any questions, comments, and or suggestions, or you just want to say hi, and we'll read your name and your location on the air on our interview shows, send us an email, which you can find on our contacts page at www.kwave6radio.tk. Take care and have a wonderful day.